Hi everyone, it's Kylie from Pained Wing. In today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to paint a hedgehog with watercolors. In the video description, I'll have a material list and then some reference photos you can use. Once you get a sketch drawn, let's get started painting. We're going to start off this painting by painting the head of the hedgehog. Here I'm adding a very diluted amount of yellow ochre paint. I'm adding this paint to dry paper. As for brush size, I would use a medium round brush. This here is about a number 6. And then next I'm going to add some raw umber right next to the yellow ochre. I'm just going to allow those two colors to mix into a gradient. And I'm going to help the two colors blend better by moving my brush back and forth. And then for the darkest part of the gradient, I'm going to add some Payne's gray over on the tip of the nose. And I'll blend that in with the rest of the gradient. And you'll notice I'm leaving a little white shine mark on the tip of the nose. Around the eye of the hedgehog, there's a little shadow. So I'm going to dip my round brush into some brown paint, and I'm going to start dabbing into the wet wash. And I'm just going to let those colors mingle. Now let's continue on with our gradient. I'm going to start adding some more yellow ochre over here. So far I have a nice even gradient. I'm going to add some darker raw umber. And then to add some texture, I'm going to start dabbing in some Payne's gray paint into the wet wash. Here I'm using a wet on wet technique to create some texture. To further create texture, I'm going to dip my brush into water, and while the wash is just slightly damp, I'm going to dab some clean dots into it. This will disrupt the wash and create some texture. And also before my wash dries, I'm going to take my brush with a fine tip, and I'm going to lightly pull out some hairs. It's important to do this while the wash is still wet so the hairs appear seamless. Instead of just pulling the paint out, you can also add some. And over here I'm going to add an abstracted foot. This painting will be a combination of loose watercolors with some details around the eye. Now let's move back to our yellow ochre. I'm just going to add some of that over here. And then drag out some raw umber. And then some more fuzzy little hairs. I want to increase the value and add more variation to the wash, so I'm going to dab in some more Payne's gray. And then some around the eye. Add a little brown to the middle of the ear, and then make the ear a little larger with some yellow ochre. I'm just going to blend that into the rest of the wash. I'm going to soften the edge here a little bit with some water. And I'm going to start drawing my piece. Now my paper is just very lightly damp. I'm going to add a little more texture. So I'm just going to poke in some water. And also while the wash is damp, let's dab in some more raw umber paint. Add to the tip of the nose and around the eye, and then to the inner ear. This will add some soft shadows. And a little bit more raw umber. And now it's allowed us to fully dry. Now that the wash is dry, let's start painting the eye of the hedgehog. The eyes can be pretty detailed. In order to create details, let's move to using a small round brush. The brush I'm using is a 3/0 round brush by the brand Princeton. And then I'm going to start outlining the outer eye with a saturated amount of Payne's gray paint. And I'm going to start filling in the inner eye with some more gray. This time my value is a little lighter. And then we'll leave 2 white dots for the highlights in the eye. This will help give life to the eye. And then next, let's add some dark details to the nose. Again, using a wet on dry technique and a saturated amount of paint, I'm just painting out some little details. And let's add some little dots on the snout where the whiskers will come out. And next I'm going to layer some brown paint around the eye. This will help deepen the value. In order to blend this into the rest of the painting, I'm dipping my brush into water and then just blend it out. To blend it, just move your brush back and forth or in a circular motion. Then for the ear, we'll be using a wet on dry technique as well. Here I'm using burnt umber, which is a little bit more of a warm brown. And then for the inner ear, I'm adding Payne's gray. Again, my paint is pretty saturated, so don't use a lot of water to keep it very dark and rich. Now we're just going to continue adding details to the face with a saturated amount of paint. Adding a ring around the eye. Just create a very thin, dark line. And a few more details around the ear. A couple hair marks in front of the face. And then paint some hair marks over here. The back of the hedgehog will have a different texture than the front of this body. I'm going to continue drawing some lines over here and then filling it in with raw umber paint. I'm going to take a round brush with some water and blend that out. And to add some variation, I'm going to dab in some yellow ochre. Now we're almost done with the face. I'm going to add a little yellow ochre to warm it up. And then just a little bit more brown around the eye. And over here, I'm using a wet on dry technique to create dry brush strokes. And add some Payne's gray over here. And we want the back of the hedgehog to have a loose effect to it. So I'm going to start with a fluffy round brush. This here is a number 8 by Princeton. I'm going to add some loose marks to the back. Make sure to leave some of the white of the paper showing. And then for the shadow, I'm going to be adding some blue paint. This here is Prussian blue. I'm going to add that to the back. And then I'm going to continue a very light shadow underneath the hedgehog. I'm going to have the blue blend in with yellow ochre. and then some more Prussian blue up here. And then while this paint is still wet, I'm going to dip my brush into raw umber, and I'm going to start dabbing into the wash. You can see the colors spread out as I dab it into the wash. Some of the dots will be on dry paper, and then some of them will hit the wet wash. Just continue making marks on your hedgehog's back. We're just trying to give the impression of the textured spiky back. Then some raw umber over here. And some more yellow ochre. So I switch back and forth between tones of brown and yellow. And then for the next layer, we'll be using Payne's Gray. And again, just dab it into the wet wash. If it hits some of the dry areas, that's okay. And then some more gray over here. Next, let's allow that to dry. And then here's the results after it dried. Next, we're going to add some dots using a wet on dry technique. So I'm adding saturated dark dots with my small round brush. I'm going to add a couple more layers of color. This will brighten things up and add more depth to the painting. So I'm going to add some burnt umber, and a light wash of Prussian blue, and some yellow ochre. Here I'm just kind of blending it in. And then there's the final results of the painting. Thank you so much for watching as I paint this hedgehog. If you decide to paint it, I'd love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram at painted_wing or use the hashtag PainWingClub. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Bye now.